Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. I'm joined by a few new guests and a few old guests. The usual suspects, as we always love and know, that would be Coach Roache, Beyond the Locker Room, of course, as well as we are joined by Trey from Raptors Republic. For anything that we are going to talk about that is related to Raptors Republic, we will definitely link it in the comment below or in the description below. So then definitely stay tuned, check out local media, check out Raptors Republic. It's really
Uh,
important to check out. So, with that being said, I'm going to talk about what we are going to talk about today, which is going to be several things. Number one, Team Canada just played a couple hours earlier. We're going to talk a little bit about that because there's some Raptors related news for that as well. Of course, we love Team Canada. We just did a FIBA preview, so definitely check that one out. The other thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit of Raptors news. There is some new news, non-news, related to Pascal Siakam. Didn't really feel like doing a 4-hour live on this because I really don't do those. So we're gonna cover it here now today. In this, sorry, you're cracking up already. Yeah, we're gonna do it here now today in this manner, and then finally we're gonna talk about the man, the myth, the legend, which is gonna be Jalen McDaniels because I don't think he's gotten enough shine lately. And I am really curious in terms of what his role will look like, and we'll do a couple little fun games around that. So without a further ado, saw the that we were down early in the game and fought back. Looked a little bit Raptors-esque for the start, and then when it was almost the opposite of the Raptors because the bench actually pulled it together. Thoughts on the game today, if you saw it?
I'll go first. I think any of the questions that you had coming in with Team Canada, like, you saw immediately. Just with the Euro game, it's a much more physical game. You're able to steer the you're able to steer the ball handler in ways that you simply just can't in the NBA. And having sheer size influences the game significantly more. The Team Canada doesn't have a big you would consider a natural five in Eurobasket or Eurobasketball. Um, Kelly Olynyk and both Dwight Powell looked very small on the court against Germany, and they also both don't have the athleticism to stop ball handlers from getting deep in the paint. And you saw that Dennis Schroeder was able to get in the paint, create rotations, and that led to easy looks for Wagner, both Wagners, easy looks for Daniel Tice. He got a lot of pick and pop opportunities that really hurt the team right away. And I think another thing that was probably concerning, especially in the first half, is just with the lineup they threw out, with the lack of shooting that's simply on the court, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on SGA to create advantages in ways that I didn't really anticipate. Obviously, with Jamal not being in the game, Wiggins not obviously being on the team, there isn't enough shooting on in that particular lineup that will force the defense to create more space. Like what we saw was they were shelling. They had a defender trailing SGA. They shelled and basically showed four against SGA every single time, which I think will be the strategy heading forward. I've In the second half we saw the bigs get more involved. Kelly Olynyk did a really good job as a secondary passer and creating lanes and opening the game up from there. And I think that's going to be their opportunity for success is secondary initiation. But overall, I think they came back and they won that second half. So I'm not overly concerned, but I don't think they should run that lineup again. Dylan Brooks and RJ Barrett is just very difficult task in terms of creating effective offense.
Coach?
Yeah, in the first half, Canada's defense it was not there at all. Germany basically could do whatever they wanted. I did notice in the or in the first half when they brought on the bench and Lou Dort came in. Lou Dort kind of changed the intensity of the game for Team Canada. FIBA basketball, where like Trey said, it's more physical, and the refs let a lot more go compared to the NBA. That is perfect basketball for Lou Dort, who is a physical type player. Um, so the defensive intensity definitely picked up in the second half for Canada, which was definitely needed. And I know Jordy mentioned about like the defense on this team is going to be crucial moving into the tournament as well. And you got to see some flashes of it from an individual standpoint. but there were many possessions throughout the game. Just as Canada was kind of making a run, I found they were sagging off the shooters on Germany too much in the key, and then they were left wide open. I don't know how many possessions that I had counted. I definitely counted over 5 or 6 that I had just noticed myself, and there could have been possibly been more. And also, kind of like what Trey said too, um, Canada went through this a few years ago when I think they'd played Czech Republic in one of the qualifying games,
Yep.
and they had a big dude on the team, and Canada didn't have anybody to match up with him. They just got killed on the boards and killed in points in the paint and stuff like that. They miss Zach Edey today, someone who can just take up space in the paint, um, and just so you're not losing so much physically inside. But overall, though, I did like Canada's comeback. It was good between Lou Dort and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. To me, those were the two MVPs for Canada by far. And also our Raptor player, Dennis Schröder, he operated pick and roll very well. Darko always, I think they said last year, Darko likes to use the word swag a lot. He had a lot of swag today. He's a super confident player,
If
and
he
that
ever lacked it,
experience was coming out. He did not lack it. And this team, I think our team this coming season, we could use a little bit of that.
Definitely.
Full disclaimer, I did not watch the game. I pretty much got a lot of the feedback online, and then Coach was giving me kind of the Cole's Notes version of it a little bit. But as you were describing it, as Trey was describing it, all I kept thinking was that Czech Republic game, which eliminated us from a chance to get the Olympics. And what was killing us, you mentioned the big guy, and what was killing us, I think the dude was like 35, that was a point guard, that dropped like 30 something on us and knocking threes down everywhere. So what happens today, it sounds like, yeah, front court, no center, and the point guard killing us again in this case here. So, and once again, you said, I was curious to see how Alexander Walker played, because he actually played quite well. He's one of the best players in BC. So the same formula seems to be the case again here. So Walker and Dort played very well then. They play very well now. The question is, where can you find shooting, which was one of the problems, and the big guys you said before, and being able to guard point guards, because those three things is the three things that gave the reason why they can't make the Olympics, a couple of years ago. So, Zach Edey would be one thing that hopefully could solve some of that problem, but the shooting and that starting five, or how to work. The point Trey made is perfect, because we worried about that when Brooks has been picked on this team. Like, okay, where do you play Brooks? Because that was always he didn't play Victoria. In Victoria, I believe it was, and I kept thinking to myself, okay, how do you fit Brooks on this team? Like, what type of role does he have? Because he's a guy already hard enough to curb his enthusiasm for shooting in a normal situation in the NBA. Now he's on a team where he's actually, quote unquote, one of the better players in the roster. What do you think he's going to do then? So that to me is going to be the biggest challenge for them moving forward, to kind of have more role definition moving forward, it sounds like. And I'm curious to see, I think they play tomorrow. So it's going to be fast to see what adjustments they make. Because honestly, even without Murray, they should really beat Germany. And we did say in the preview, Germany's a sneaky team to watch. But I still think you got to beat Germany without Murray. You got to do it, man.
Yeah, it's nice as we have a couple quote unquote tune-up games between now and I believe the 18th is the last one that we play, right before the World Cup. So I think 12th, 17th, 18th, from what I remember, is off the top of my head. And I might be missing one game, but there's quite a number of matches that are coming up today. What I noticed is that, and the coach and I talked about this very, very briefly before we started this, is that their backline defensive communication was really bad. there's other choice words that I could use for it, but I'll just say it was bad. I agree. They miss Zach Edey. I don't know how his NCAA schedule works. I hope that we're able to. I think we should be fine, because I think NCAA starts later on in the year.
Like November,
but I don't know, like with school and whatnot, how that works. I'm sure it'll be fine. So he has a good excuse, but yeah, I want to see him, because he is like the quintessential FIBA like big that you need on this roster, and he would make a big difference in terms of the physicality, being able to handle it, being able to do a lot. Dennis Schröder, and sorry, Mr. Schröder, if I am mispronouncing your name, but I thought he did really well. I liked the signing when it happened. He wasn't my first choice, but I thought it was a good reactive move. As I would describe. But maybe not as proactive as the other move that they made. But we'll talk about that gentleman very shortly. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to the news today, or the non-news, as I say, which is that, according to Shams, not Woj, so Shams bomb incoming. This is kind of a little bit of what I would call broken news, uh, as we kind of already knew it. But yeah, the Raptors said no to a deal, which would have been some draft compensation. We don't know what that is, but we could talk about it in a second. It was also, of course, AJ Griffin. A lot of Atlanta fans said, no, 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 we're going to give you what we want to give you. Well, I guess not. Maybe Landry Fields is a little bit more willing to give up because, in a sense, right now, as their roster is today, it seems like they've taken a step back. If all else, moves forward. Um, no offense to Patty Mills, but I think in terms of what he can provide, um, I like some of their young guys. John Collins, regardless of the contract, is a very productive player for them. Also, him and Trey, that is your lob threat. Yes, he has other lob threats, but that is the lob threat that just went out. It takes chemistry, it takes time to build that stuff. So, yeah, we declined that, and I think it was DeAndre Hunter and AJ Griffin were the two main pieces. No Kobe Buffkin. Really quick, we can go in the same order, I guess. But just quick thoughts on that today.
Um, I think for me it really depends on like what their plans are. If their plans are to extend Pascal and wait another year, that's completely fine. Well, I do think that will probably have some negative effects on Scotty's overall growth and scalability next season, just because they're going to be entering the season with 3 front court players who all struggle to shoot. Keep maintaining that asset makes sense. With the current position that they're in, it's very unique in the NBA. We haven't seen an all NBA player kind of force his way to stay on a team, which is I guess good and a bad thing in a sense. For me, I'm very high on AJ Griffin. If you put him in this draft, I would have selected him top 5. He has the ability to shoot he's one of the best shooters to come out of college in a very, very long time. He has the strength and lateral quickness to defend at a very good level. And he's shown the ability to offer some scalability as a passer as well as in pick and roll situations. So I think his game has the ability to go up a lot higher. And there also is the fact that he is still recovering from the injuries that he had in Duke. So there is the opportunity for him, his athleticism, to continue to grow and get back to the level it was in high school. So it's very interesting to me. Obviously, like draft compensation is very, very vague. Like that could have meant 2 second-round picks. But if it was a Sacramento, let's say best case scenario, Sacramento pick and their 2029 pick, I would have personally taken the deal. If you don't plan on extending Pascal and he's also put them in a situation where they have little to no leverage, the Atlanta Hawks are giving up a good amount of compensation for someone they have no idea is going to resign or not. So I would have personally leaned it towards trading him.
Coach?
It's tough because Siakam doesn't have a lot of leverage right now in terms of he's got 1 year left on this deal. Let me rephrase that. Not so much Siakam, but the front office. Maybe that's a better word. The front office doesn't have a lot of leverage right now with a Siakam deal because of the 1 year. It's going to be the same with OG. It's going to be the same with Trent if they decide as well. I like AJ Griffin. He was very good at Duke. Kind of like what Trey said, great 3-point shooter. He would definitely have to be part of a deal coming back. For me, it's Hunter that I'm not too sold on, only because I feel like we'd have already 3 DeAndre Hunters on this team, and OG and a little bit of Precious and Hunter. And I just feel like that would be a bit more redundancy that we already have in that case, because he's a nice player. I mean, in that case, with Hunter and OG, you'd be able to guard 1 through 4 with those guys. Hunter is a pretty good shooter, like 35% from three. I think he had the year before that about 38%. But at the same time, it's the fit for me I don't like. I'm trying to think of the lineup. Like, is it Scotty, Gary, OG, Hunter, and Pirtle? And I'm just kind of wondering who's going to average 20 on this team. When you trade a guy like Siakam, who averaged about 25 in one of the worst offenses in the NBA, I think that's quite telling. And trading a guy who gets you 25 a game for a guy that gets you maybe 15 to 17 and plus AJ Griffin, whatever he might give you next year. I just feel like that would really hamper the offense. I still think you need that one guy who can get you a bucket. And if you were to get rid of Siakam, I would be very concerned about the offense on this team moving forward. Unless you get a guy coming back who can get you 20 and stuff like that. Like when DeJounte Murray was originally in the deal, okay, I can kind of see that. Murray would have been a good fit, especially if you were losing Fred and you bring in Murray. Okay, now I'm thinking a bit more. But just with this current deal with kind of the fit of Hunter, not so much Griffin, but Hunter, I'm not sold on it too much. But the Raptors have done this to themselves at the same time.
Um, I'll put it this way. I really hate talking about this subject, man, because I just feel so much wasted oxygen.
Tell us how you really feel.
I know. I think like what's all said and done, like the finish up, the kind of jump on your point, Coach. They did it to themselves. If you look at the options available to Trey's point, sign them. If you want to trade him after that, that probably makes the most sense if you really want to move on from him. The next best possibility in my mind is Riot put all the chips in, wait till the trade deadline and see who's desperate enough to get like a Kyrie moment and say, you know what, we can't take it anymore. We need to move because X player we have on our team might walk next year or something like that. We need to get someone to kind of help in here, and maybe those offers might get a little bit better than what Atlanta's offering. And then the specific Atlanta offer, if Buffkin's not in the deal in some form or fashion, I like Griffin too, but like to me, like for what you're looking for needs, to me, Buffkin kind of fits the needs more than what Griffin offers. And then you're forced to take Hunter, which honestly I don't really care for that much in this case, but you gotta make the money work. So he's it now since Murray's off the table, obviously, and JC's out the door. We didn't want him anyway. So the only other contract that would make sense is his, because we're not doing Clint Capella anytime soon. So that's really all it is. So I mean, I'm not a big Hunter fan, but I guess if you look at it as a two-part play, maybe if Hunter comes and OG walks, then it makes a little more sense to some extent, because then at least now you have someone that can essentially be the OG replacement in the future. But yeah, I would at this point here, you gotta try to strengthen your position a bit and maybe wait for the deadline if they really are that desperate to move Seattle and see what shakes out at that point.
Yeah, I think Siakam has the most amount of leverage. He's doing something that OG wouldn't do, which is OG's not going to say, I'm only going to sign here. Like he's definitely not going to do that. I'll tell you that. Because no matter what, Siakam's going to get his money. I'm sorry, but if that is a problem with people, he's going to get his money, and he's earned it too. And I'm not someone who pocket watches, but frankly, the way that the NBA is going from a monetary standpoint, it's a healthy league. Let's put it that way. If you see the contracts that are just handed out, I mean, if people are complaining about an average of $49 million for Pascal Siakam, and then you see like, oh, within the next 3 years, AD, who is typically not playing as much as Pascal Siakam, he's going to be making $62 million. It shouldn't be a problem from a monetary standpoint. Not to mention, Coach has pointed this out, but it's a very good point. I'm going to keep bringing it up, where it's like we have about at least $20 million ish of assets on this roster that probably potentially, which we'll talk about later, may not even play. So why don't we shift that if that's a problem, because they're assets that may not play. That's just dead money. That is what it is, which is unfortunate. So in terms of 3-team deals, I'll just get that out of the way. We don't do that. like to quote
Like,
Brian
I'm not waiting
Windhorst,
for this whole discourse, the 3-team deal when that comes up.
yeah,
man.
it's like every time they're like, well, Dallas. I'm like, okay, well, you go deal with Dallas, then come back, right? Like, we don't do that. It's like we're not that sophisticated in terms of the deal making that we do. You know, when I remember seeing what was it, Turner last year, where they were under the cap and raised his money. I was like, oh, you could do that? Like, oh, snap. You know, that's nice, right? Like we
Right.
should do that, Mr. Bobby Webster. You know, the man who worked for the front office of the league doing the CBA. Can you do that, please? I guess not. So that's okay. It is perfectly fine. It happens. But yeah, I think the other thing too, you brought up a really good point in terms of the Kyrie deal. At bare minimum, that is a you know, an expectation at least. I can't accept less than a Kyrie. Okay, I for better or for worse, I think that there have been less public facing problems that
Mm-mm.
Pascal Siakam has had. Uh, put it simply, than a Kyrie. And so, and on top of that, he's also still an All NBA level player. He was what 15 votes away last year, so he's at least a borderline All NBA player. I think you can, you know, can a brother at least get me the same package that a Kyrie got? That's my only thing. I'm being a little bit long winded here, so I'm sorry, but the only thing is that in terms of the draft compensation, I just unless they make a deal, a secondary deal that is Atlanta, because I know that they're like, oh well, you can deal Hunter, but again, when you're when you already struggle making 3-team deals, and we have guys on here which again you're questioning why are they still here for even their sake, you know, Flynn. It's getting cruel at this point, you know, to have to, you know, put him back on the roster and say, hey man, this year it's gonna be better. And like I said before, it's almost like a dog at the SPCA that's been abused by its owner. At some point, it's like, you know, you're doing the dog wrong. I'm not saying that Flynn is a dog, people. Don't worry. So I just think that the least complex deals that you can do, the better. And I understand if they're going to do a Pascal Siakam deal, but if they're really truly wanting to tank, then you got to trade OG as well. Because the worst thing that you can do is trade Pascal Siakam, end up in a situation where you're giving away the 8th pick of this draft. That would be such a waste. So yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think for me, like I look at the pick as already as a sunk cost. The Jakob trade like changed the identity of the team, and obviously they didn't get the reward for taking that large of a risk. So personally, like whatever the Spurs get is kind of whatever at this point. I wouldn't let it influence my decision in that sense. And with when it comes to OG, obviously we have no internal intel on what his thought process is. But ideally, with Pascal being gone, he would be getting the role that he would want and scale to that point. So I would keep him personally, let him explore that role, re-sign him, and use Scotty, him, AJ Griffin, and whatever picks that you do get to propel yourself into the next era of this team.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I could brace myself for 82 games of an OG led offense, man. I don't know about that, man. Trey, you're asking for a lot for a brother, man.
The second half of the season wasn't that bad. The mid he started falling down. He was getting to the rim. He's developed a little handoff pass too.
Yeah, I guess I mean OG's always this great tease, man. It's always she gives a glimpse of it for a month. There was remember that happened, and then it's like the rest of the season's like what happened then. So I just feel like I've seen this story so many times with OG. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know we're going down this path, man. This will be fascinating if OG led offense with Scotty.
He's great. Like he's a champion. He's a championship player. He's irreplaceable. I would do everything in my power to make sure that he's still on the team, especially with Scotty.
OG
Anunoby, Ogua Anunoby.
This needs to be its own show at some point, man. I'll leave it for now on derailed.
There is no other player they could trade for the NBA that would replace what he does for them.
Oh man! Oh gosh! We are so diametrically across the board.
We will broach this subject at another time. But a good subject nevertheless. Coach, any final thoughts from your standpoint?
Well, kind of like what Trey said a little bit about the Pirtle acquisition. I remember I was talking to you guys before the trade deadline, and Precious was doing well at center. He was on his little 6 week stretch where he was doing okay. And the Raptors were not. I think they were like 22 and 27 at the deadline. And I remember saying to you guys, play him at center. You guys stink anyway. See the rest of the year what you got with Precious. And then the trade happened, which I don't think any of us expected. And I don't think any of us expected that, oh, we're going to try to compete this year and go get like Pirtle and give up a draft pick in 2024 and 2 second rounders and stuff like that. And that kind of put Precious to the bench. And now, once again, this year, we still don't know what really Precious is, and we're still waiting to see what Precious is. And now we're also waiting to see what Scotty is this year. That's why I am liking the increase in role that he's going to get this year, because you have to find out what he is. Number one is Scotty. And now that has changed for Precious more so because you get the bench get a lot better. It just seems like that they're going to roll with this or going to run it back in some form. The pieces are a little different, but this is going to be a big year for those guys for sure to see what exactly they are as players.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's all interesting in terms of the OG thing. I'll just say really quickly where I stand. Don't worry, it's not going to be the same type of rant, but I think he's close to his peak offensively. I think that there is, I mean, when in some of the situations when you're the seventh percentile off, offensive efficiency type player in isolation, how much can you scale that up? I mean, for reference, what was it? De'Aaron Fox went from being the absolute worst defensive player in the league to maybe the 20th percentile. So if you say maybe he could get to 30th, maybe max 40th percentile, that's probably not enough long term. So I think you could probably get enough out of him, but like again, long term, I'm not sure. The other thing is that in terms of his next contract, I don't know. I have concerns on whether or not his next contract will scale well by comparison to others, but that's just me. But I understand either way. But I think either way, it would be. I guess my main concern is that I would want as many blue chip prospects, even if it's like AJ Griffin is a lot closer to a blue chip prospect than others that have been talked about in the deal. I think Kobe Buffkin, I really like him a lot, but even after talking and watching him, I think he needs some time. And so I don't know if I see all NBA potential in those two, and that's why that's why I feel the way that I feel. I was totally in favor of like the scoot whatever that. I don't think that it was ever discussed seriously, but if that was right now, I would do even now.
Yep.
Because that's like significant. But my thing is just more I want as many, if you're going to gamble, I want the risk mitigation if possible. Because you guys have talked about it as we get into the next topic. We have a bunch of guys on this team that really, really struggle. And part of that is development, but part of it is role definition. And part of that comes down to there's too many paths for them to become X, Y, and Z type player. Now, I think that will be improved under a Darko offense versus a Nick Nurse-led offense, regardless of the like if they can be a top 20 or top, say, 18 or 15 offense. That doesn't matter. I think the process will look better because, for example, with Precious, sounds bad. I would kind of box him in and say, you do 3 things, right? Do these 3 things well. Now we can work on the other things. Not, I've seen, I'm going to give you guys some nightmares, but it's like, I remember times when it's like Chris Boucher bringing up the ball and I'm like, let's buckle up, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. And most times it's going to turn into a turnover, right? When that finally stopped, same thing with Precious. I remember that was like, even after the Tampa year, and it was like, whoa, this is rough, and so I think that's the type of thing where I kind of want to see what we have, because we had Siakam, and I told you the lines that spaced it, and it was like, one of the lines was like, it was like Siakam, Boucher, Flynn, and OG, and like OG was like, the passing lane was definitely covered for OG, and it was like, okay, all right, Siegfried and Roy, like go create something, right? Like go make magic. And that's That's tough
Lord
to do.
help us.
So with that being said, I think we're a little bit better because the back half of our roster is. But I'm curious to see what'll happen. I don't think that Masai is going to make any move. Period. So except for apparently signing, one of the guys who kind of signed the latest version of the CBA. So with that being said, we need to talk about the back half of the roster because we haven't talked about Jalen McDaniels enough, in my opinion. And so I just want to get everyone's opinion on Jalen McDaniels, both offensively, defensively. Just what do you think he's going to bring to the Raptors?